It is time to be unapologetically impatient in our pursuit of justice. I see this in my own life when navigating systems of education, healthcare, and industry that are not designed with my family and our needs nor best interest in mind. And you can see this every day in the quiet experiences of all families who are navigating perceived disadvantages from disability, language, income, culture, education, and the discrimination they encounter on the regular. This book is my love letter to my children, my family, and our generation. It's for every person who has felt small and seen wrong. It's for care providers and makers and dreamers and doers, the educators and the architects of a future that embraces a common humanity. It may take our lifetime to change how systems operate and even how you and I are seen in the system, but we can each harness the power in our positionality right now to interrupt the status quo. We can do it every day by prioritizing compassionate, empathetic inquiry. We can ask questions just like my dad taught me, with the intention of calling people in, not out. We can share expertise in the form of lived experience in real time to affect change. Just like I will share stories and illustrations to show you how each and every one of us can use evidence-based strategies to build a future for all children and families. I was going to be a psychologist. I wanted to be the change I wanted to see in the world by doing research that evolved school policies and practices. So for the next 5 years, I deeply studied how the science of learning and social emotional development could support all kids and communities to thrive. And while I learned how to think like a prevention scientist in my coursework, my understanding expanded most, and I like to say this is where I fell in love, in working in schools with youth and educators who were all othered by the US education system. I taught youth with emotional and behavioral challenges who were relegated to windowless basements in abandoned public school buildings taken over by the state. Youth learning in correctional facilities, youth who were wards of the state residential programs, medically complex youth in and out of exclusionary public school placements, and neurodivergent youth banished to hallways and trailers on the outskirts of their neighborhood public schools. I saw the best of humanity in their educators and support staff colliding with a never-ending sea of barriers to their students' joy. All of these unfortunate experiences were laced with systemic prejudice. The systems designed to support the youth who had been positioned by society to be most in need of services and social support were undeniably broken. I asked anyone who would listen to me why. From school administrators, district leaders, mental health professionals, parents, advocates, teachers, specialists, families, and the students themselves. And the answer, it was always some version of, it's just the way we do things here. It's just the way things are. I have been thinking about writing this book for a long time, but what pushed me to finally sit down and do it was when our middles, Salvatore and Eleanor, started asking questions. When Salvatore asked me why he had to hide for a drill at school. When Eleanor asked me why I call her neurodivergence a superpower, while a teacher told her disability is an illness. When they asked why we had to wait for another bus to accommodate their older brother Miles and his wheelchair when all the other families got to go ahead of us. My children's questions inspired me to a new level of realization. Why are we being so patient in the face of injustice? What are we waiting for? To be sure, nearly everyone believes that patience is a virtue, and in fact, it is one of few principles of correctness that communities across ideological divides agree on. But there is a distance between being polite and being right. I guess about 2 years ago, I was at an academic conference, just like I'm in town right now in Chicago at an academic conference. I was at a conference called AERA, and I was meeting with publishers. And so I was like, I have this idea for this book, and I was pitching my idea, and I was realizing that it was like falling on the wrong group of people. Like I was talking to academic publishers, and I did not want to write an academic book. I wanted to write a book for everyone. The book that you pick up at the airport and you read on a plane. I really wanted to lean into the popular psychology side of the applications of my science. And so I was sitting with that thinking like, gosh, I just wasted a few hours meeting with all these publishers and that got nowhere. And I met up with a couple of other academics. and I named them in the book at the back end, but the first one that I met with was Sean Talamis, who's an incredible academic, and he used to work with Angela Duckworth, if you've heard any of her work. And we were chatting about when he's a professional coach, and so I was telling him how I was disappointed, and I said, I'm going to wait until I go on sabbatical to write this book. Going on sabbatical in like academic jobs is basically you get a large chunk of time off. And I'm like, that's when I'm going to write the book. I'm going to be eligible for sabbatical in a year and a half or 2 years. And then I'm going to figure this out and write this book. And Sean was like, Chris, you clearly thrive when you're busy. I don't know who else needs to tell you that, but look, you are managing so many different pieces at once. If you want to write the book now, write the book now. It'll fall into place, because why wait until you suddenly have the time? That's not at all how you operate professionally and personally, for that matter. And so I left that conversation and then proceeded to meet up with a couple of other academics. And I was like, so I'm writing this book. And I just started pitching the book to a few other folks across the field and being like, here's what it is. Here's what I'm thinking, the application of emotional intelligence and gratitude and mindset. And I've been told by actually a shared friend of ours, Tim Shriver. He had told me a long time ago when he heard me speak, he said, you are the most unapologetically impatient person I've ever heard talk about their children and the rights of people with disabilities. And I was like, Tim, when I write a book, that's the title. That's it. That's where we're going with it. And so I was like, here it is. And it was time to do it. And then that was it. Like the next week I found the right publisher and then started moving forward. I learned through that. But I've explained how that was not helpful. No one's needs got met. Like I was hot. I was angry. Like I was frustrated. My kid wasn't being met. I was angry at that doctor. I was angry at that school leader. And that solved nothing. Like it was just this kind of superficial in the moment. And like I can recognize that I have an opportunity to call people in and not out, because when we're engaging in, and I refer to it broadly as having you listen for these signals of discomfort in yourself and the signals of like when people say what the way things are, the way they do things, like the way they answer you or the way they set you up, that we can listen for these signals and we can invite them in, because we are not meant to develop by ourselves and move through this world. It's not meant to be a siloed experience. And the people that you are engaging with, they are just, like most cases, the face of the injustice in that moment. They are not actually, I don't think in most cases, the injustice themselves. They're like the teacher who is tired and overworked, and the administrator who sized you up when you got there, and the doctor who was 2 hours late because of something that was completely out of their control. And so you don't need an opponent in the interaction you have with them. What you need is a partner. And the distinction here is that when we yell at someone or when we get angry and we get hot, we put them on the defense. And I break down this psychology in the book. And in doing so, and in breaking that down, they're no longer listening to learn from you. They're listening to win in that interaction. And so you've broken your opportunity to have a partner here. And this is where I talk about like the opportunities for us to employ these skills to really begin to move and affect change. Because if we can hear it in ourselves and recognize it, and then start it's incremental. This is not everything all at once overnight. It is a very slow process of hearing the way you're responding and what you're saying and trying it out and who you're engaging with. What could be different? And I'll tell you what's been really incredible about the book, and I like to think of it as like seeds of hope and love that are like going all through education and medicine and like worldwide, and the way it's getting picked up, that like, I know that there are conditions for families like mine and everyone else's that are changing right now because of how people are responding. They're writing me these notes and they're saying like, I heard it, I saw myself in what you said, and I saw this is what I could say, or I didn't know I could say it. I could say anything at all, that I had a stake here, but you showed me I could say something and you gave me the tools of how to say it.